And a very good morning to you on this Melbourne Cup Day. John Fradgley from the Bell Legal Group back with you for The Law and You. Your opportunity to get free legal advice right here on 4CRB. All you need to do is get on the telephone. 55208888 is that number. Again, 55208888. And don't forget you can use our email address, talkback@4crb.com, if you're not able to get through on the telephone because of work commitments or whatever at this particular time. So don't forget to use that email address, talkback@4crb.com. Otherwise, you can call straight through, and at the moment we have no calls online. So if you have a question or a query on the law, 55208888. And thank you to all the people who called through last week and made for such an interesting program. We had, I think, 7 or 8 callers, which is getting pretty close to the maximum number that we're able to deal with in any program. So that certainly made for a very wide and varied program. I had been trying to comment for the last couple of weeks on an email that I received a couple of weeks ago in relation to smoking in unit complexes. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to comment on it the week that the email came through because the program, we just ran out of time. But I did send an email response to Janice, who sent the email in and sent through some material. But I thought it may be of interest to people because it is something that has come up on the Law and You from time to time, people calling in about concerns that people are smoking on the balcony of their apartment and the smoke is drifting up into their apartment, causing problems for them. So there are 2 different areas that need to be considered in this. The first is whether the person who's causing the problem with their smoking is a tenant or whether they're an owner. If they're a tenant, then obviously, in addition to the body corporate laws, it will primarily be dealt with under the residential tenancy agreement that person has signed. And quite often, residential tenancy agreements will have in them that people are not allowed to smoke. And so that may be grounds for the issue of a Form 11. And in the majority of cases, particularly if the building has a manager, then it would be the manager of the complex who would be dealing with that. But that would be dealt with under the residential tenancy law and certainly not under the body corporate law. When it comes to the body corporate law, the situation is unfortunately a little clouded. Not clouded with smoke, but just clouded. Section 167 of the Queensland legislation says that the occupier of a lot must not use or permit the use of the lot or the common property in a way that causes a nuisance or hazard, interferes unreasonably with the use or enjoyment of another lot included in the scheme, or interferes unreasonably with the use or enjoyment of the common property by a person who's lawfully upon the common property. Now, at first blush, you'd think to yourself, well, okay, the smoke drifting up from the unit downstairs is causing a nuisance because the person up in the upper unit or adjoining unit, whatever, is finding that's interfering with their use and enjoyment of their lot. But the courts have taken an interesting view on this. They've basically said that the test is an objective test rather than a subjective test, and so therefore what they're really looking at is someone of ordinary sensitivity rather than someone of heightened sensitivity. And so, unfortunately, in the bulk of the cases that have come before the court in this area, on this subject, the litigant, the plaintiff, has not been successful. The good news is, though, that Queensland is looking at changing its laws in a number of areas in relation to body corporates generally. And one of the areas and one of the major concerns, interestingly, that was raised by people who've submitted reports or made submissions in relation to that has been on the question question of smoking. Pets and smoking were the two major ones. And interestingly, unlike New South Wales, where I believe are looking at or have passed a law to force owners to sell out in a building by special resolution with a heightened majority. That was not a question that was high on the radar of Queenslanders, so that was quite interesting. But enough of that. We have our first caller online, as we say. A very good morning to Tom. G'day, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, hello.
How are you, Tom?
Yeah, very good, thanks, John. Yeah.
How can we help?
I don't know whether you can answer this question or not. I committed a crime in about 30 years ago, 79.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if I need legal aid. Just going to confess to the crime.
Right. Okay. Well, I would certainly be recommending that you do get legal advice before you proceed any further.
Right. Legal advice.
Yes. What you could probably do, Tom. Which area do you live on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, I live in Nerang.
Okay, right. Well, look, the Gold Coast Community Legal Centre and Advice Bureau, they conduct visited offices or centres all over the Gold Coast, and you can get some initial free legal advice from them. So what I would suggest you do in the first instance, Tom, is give them a call. Have you got a pen handy?
Yeah, sure, John, yeah.
Okay, so their number is 5532 9611.
Okay,
5532 9611.
Sure.
Now, their office, their main office is located in Railway Street at Southport, but if you give them a call, they do visit all up and down the Gold Coast from Coolangatta, I think, all the way up to Coomera or thereabouts. And I certainly recall that they do have a visited office at Nerang. So you could just give them a call and find out when they have someone out there, and you could organise to go in and see them and at least get some initial advice on what you should do in your circumstances.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it happened the crime was committed in Sydney, New South Wales.
Right. Okay. Well, notwithstanding where it was committed, I'm sure they would be able to assist you in providing you with advice about what you should do.
Yeah, I was just going to go straight in and confess and just see what happens from there.
Yeah, well, as I say, look, I would get some legal advice first. It may or may not be advisable for you to have a lawyer accompany you when you go to the police to confess. But I would certainly recommend that before you do anything, that you do sit down and just get some preliminary advice so that they can assist you in dealing with the matter in the best manner possible.
Yeah, I haven't got the funds to have a lawyer and that,
No, well, a good thing about the Gold Coast Community Legal Centre and Advice Bureau is their services are free. And and they also may be able to direct you either to legal aid or alternatively to the duty solicitor who appears, although it sounds like you may have to appear in New South Wales. So
that's right. Yeah,
that will be a complicating factor, and that's why I think it would be a very good idea for you to get some advice about just what's the best way to deal with that, so that you can go ahead and clear your conscience on it, but at the same time get some advice about how best you can ensure that everything proceeds as you expect it to proceed, rather than finding some unpleasant surprises along the way.
That's right, yeah.
All right.
Okay, John, thanks very much.
Okay, Tom, all the very best. And the time on 4CRB is 15 minutes past 9. That's past 10 south of the Tweed. We'll be back after this word from our sponsor.
Would you like to meet other business and professional women at our sponsor, Business Women's Incorporated? The next event is Friday the 8th of November at Green Days, Ashmore Road, Bundall, with a 2-course meal and a glass of wine. Early bird price is just $60. The November Forum presents Petrus Lapis, Master Performance Consultant, on how to think outside the box. New members welcome. Register now at bwinc.com.au.
Harvey Norman South Tweed deliver anywhere and they guarantee to beat any genuine competitor's price. And if you want good old-fashioned service, then Harvey Norman South Tweed is the place to shop. Their specialised staff will give you the best advice for your needs with a great range of computers, furniture, bedding and electrical. There is no need for you to shop anywhere else. Why don't you go and see the friendly staff at Harvey Norman South Tweed, because customer service is their priority.
Go, Harvey, go.
Another sponsor.
And this is the Law and You on 4CRB. Our telephone number 55208888. That number again 55208888. We did expect the program to be a little bit quiet today because there's apparently something else going on later in the day, which I'm sure is occupying everyone's minds, and that, of course, would be the race that stops the station right here on 4CRB. So my panel operator today, Tommy, is racing. I'm racing as well. We were just discussing the track a moment ago, whether it's heavy and how we're all going to fit down the hallway of the studios here. But it should be quite an event, so don't forget to be tuned for that. But in the meantime, if you have a question or a query on the law, you can get straight through now because the lines are all clear. 55208888. And while we're waiting for some more calls to come through, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today is the question of wage theft, which has certainly been very prominent in the news in recent times. Obviously, some of the very high-profile cases, which in the overwhelming majority of instances, from what I can see, have come about as a result of voluntary disclosure by the employers that they've made a mistake. But there are also instances that are probably a little less prominent, particularly where people are working casually. And there are issues about whether they've been paid at the correct rate for the days they're working and whether they, in fact, have received the correct amount of money for the days they're working, because they might be entitled to penalty rates or whatever for the days that they're working. Now, this has been a big issue for many people, and so the Fair Work Ombudsman's Office has developed an app which can now be used by employees on their phone, called Record My Hours, and it makes it quick and easy for employees to record and store the hours they've worked and other information relevant to their employment. Previous to this, the Ombudsman's Office would accept a diary that people kept of their working hours, or alternatively, if they had a calendar and they wrote on the calendar what hours, etc. they worked. But this is going to make it very, very simple for casual employees in particular to be able to keep a record of the hours they've worked and to make sure that they're being paid correctly. And this, of course, is something that may be very relevant to the grandchildren or the children of people who listen to 4CRB. So if you have a grandchild who's working a casual job and they're concerned about whether they're being paid correctly, then you can be the hip grandparent who says to them, "Hey, do you know there's an app you can download to your phone called Record My Hours?" And they can put that on their phone, and they'll be able to keep a proper record of the time that they're working, etc. So just a little bit of advice there for people who are out there in the workplace at the present time. We still don't have any callers online. Everyone's busy studying the form guide. So if you have a question or a query and would like to get straight through, do it right now. 55208888 is that number. That number again, 55208888. While we're waiting for some callers to come through, the other thing that has come up a bit just in the last week or so, these things tend to run in flurries. You either get a number of inquiries on a particular point or you get none. And one at present has been in relation to people who have assets in other jurisdictions throughout the world, and for various reasons want to ensure that that their assets all over the world are not taken into account in that other jurisdiction. And so quite often we recommend to people that they prepare a will that is specific to that particular jurisdiction, that foreign jurisdiction where they need to deal with their assets, and then have a separate will made in Australia which is going to deal with their Australian assets, and which clearly says that this will is made to deal with my Australian estate only, and I revoke all former wills, but only to the extent that they affect my assets in Australia, because obviously if you were to put a full revocation clause in a will, even that you've expressed as being to only apply overseas or to your Australian assets, you could unwittingly revoke the other will. So just something to be a little bit careful of. But enough of that. We have another caller online. As we say, a very good morning to Anne. G'day, Anne. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you.
That's good. How can I help?
Oh, look, I just had a query. I'm living in Melbourne now, but I was residing in the Gold Coast, and I was studying at the university at Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And my circumstances changed. I'm a mature age student, and I had to leave to care for my husband. And I had a debt at Bond for about $70,000. I was studying medicine at the time.
Right.
And they let me go. They gave me a year off. They were quite good in the beginning, and they let me go an extra year to see how my husband would do because he had a few health issues, and I had to leave. And situations changed. Been to Melbourne, I'm caring for him now, I'm his carer, but I got a letter from them regarding, payment of the debt in full, and obviously my financial situation had changed, and they said that they were going to take me to court for a judgment in Brisbane, and I wrote them a letter of my statement of my financial statement, just how we are at the moment. He's retired, and he's obviously his care, etc. And I said, look, honestly, at this point in time, we are unable to, etc. I wanted to know, because they went through a solicitor, and I spoke to them, and they said, well, right, send your situation at the moment. How do I find out whether anything happened in the court? I haven't heard a thing, and it's been months ago.
Well, were proceedings actually issued against you? Did you receive a summons or a complaint? A plaint?
Yes, I did. Right. And I did, and it said that it was going to be heard at a certain day in Brisbane, and then prior to that, I did speak to somebody in Queensland Legal Aid, like the number you said, and spoke to them, and they advised me, look, tell them your situation because this is what it is. And I did that, and I sent it to the solicitors who forwarded off to the university, and I haven't heard boo since then. So I actually don't know how to see what's actually happened.
Right. Look, you can do a search. Do you know what court the proceedings were issued in? Was it the Magistrates Court, the District Court, or the Supreme Court?
I don't know. I'll have to look for my paperwork.
Right. So if you take a look at the papers you received to work out which jurisdiction it was in, certainly in the Supreme Court, and I believe also in the District Court and possibly in the Magistrates Court, you can actually look up online to see what the current status of proceedings are. So that if you've got the plaint number of the proceedings that were issued against you, you should be able to look up online and just see where it's at. So it'll show, for example, whether obviously a defence. It sounds to me like you haven't filed a defence in relation to the matter, because you're basically acknowledging that you owe the money, but you're just saying that your financial position is such that that you can't do it. Because I think Bond operate differently, don't they, to other public institutions? I think the public institutions, you end up with what's called a HEX debt, and that is only repaid through your wages, whereas I think from memory, Bond operates through, I'm not sure whether it's through one of the banks or something or other, where they provide the finance for your degree, and therefore it is a debt that is repayable regardless of whether you commence working or not. So it just makes it a little bit different, doesn't it? Because of the private nature of the university. So look, you could have a look at that in the first instance, or the other thing that you could do in relation to it, Anne, would be to ring back to the lawyers and ask them what the current status is, although you're probably reluctant to do that because it's almost what we call prodding the bear, isn't it? So
exactly. I was
yes.
very reluctant to do that. I thought, well, I'll probably find out soon enough, but I haven't. And I think it's been a few months now, so yeah.
Yeah, well, look, if you take a look, just do that. I'm pretty sure that all the jurisdictions are there, and particularly if you've got the plaint number, because I know I don't deal in the area of litigation, so I get involved on the periphery of it through family provision claims in estate matters and things like that, and the occasional matter before QCAT where people are claiming in relation to the enforceability or otherwise of powers of attorney or to have them revoked, etc. And I do know that you can look up the QCAT proceedings, so I suspect that you probably can look up, if the proceedings were issued in the Magistrates Court, I suspect you can look that up online, and that will perhaps show you the current status of the proceedings and show that there was a plaint issued on a particular date. It will, by the sounds of what you're saying, will show that there's been no defence filed. But if the other side have in fact entered judgment by default against you, which is what it's called, then it would show on the papers that there has been a judgment by default entered against you.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll do that. I'll do a bit of a search and hopefully I can find out without having to ring.
Yes. Well, look, if you do that, or the other thing you could possibly do would be, if you do find the proceedings, there should be a number for the registry of the court that was dealing with the matter, and you could ring them up and ask them if they can advise you the current status of the file. I do know you can also go to the court and make a search of the court file, but of course, you being in Melbourne, it's not particularly viable for you to fly up just to have a look at the court file. So I think one of those alternatives may be able to help you and hopefully get the information that you need.
Fantastic. Appreciate your help. Thanks very much.
Okay then, Anne, all the very best for that. Well, the time is just coming up to 28 minutes past 9. We might have time for one more very quick call if someone were to get on the line straight away. Otherwise, that'll probably be it for today. Just going back to what I was talking about before Anne rang in. So, as I was saying, if you are one of those people or you know someone who still has assets in a foreign jurisdiction. One of the common ones that I see is South Africa, where, and particularly jurisdictions where they have still have death duties, it is very worthwhile for someone to ensure that they get proper legal advice both in the country where they hold assets and also within Australia as to how their will should be structured to ensure that they minimise the extent to which their estate might be subject to tax or death duties in their previous country of residence. So if you know anyone who falls into that category, don't forget to just mention it to them so that they don't unwittingly forget and just have an Australian will, which has then got to apply in that other jurisdiction and which will, of course, then bring their worldwide assets into high relief in terms of how their estate is going to be dealt with in the foreign jurisdiction. Well, thank you to those couple of people who've called in this morning. I hope you enjoy this Melbourne Cup day, and don't forget to stay tuned to 4CRB for the race that stops the station later in the day. I'll look forward to being back with you with another program of The Law and You, of course, next Tuesday morning. But as always, from me, John Fradgley of the Bell Legal Group, it's goodbye and God bless.